Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Chad. In today's episode, I want to ask the question, can you prove God exists? And if you can prove that he exists, well, which God is the real God? Stay tuned. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here. If this is your first time checking out this channel, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. This channel and podcast, it's all about helping you know, love, and defend the Word. And the question on the table today is a very common question that you're going to find, especially in our more scientific-minded, secular-minded culture. The question goes something like this. Can you prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that God exists? I am scientific minded, I am rationally minded, and I only believe what I can rationally prove. So this puts a little bit of the burden on Christians' shoulders. How do we answer this? So let me show you one thing really quick, and then I want to lay out for you 6 lines of argumentation that will point us towards the existence of God, and especially the existence of the Christian God. The first thing I want to show you before we get to these lines of argumentation, nobody lives by pure evidence and pure proof alone. And there's a couple of reasons why we don't live by pure evidence and pure proof alone. Number one, it's really hard to actually prove anything. This isn't my idea. If you look at philosophers and see how they've been thinking about thinking, what you're going to find is that it's actually really, really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to prove something. And a lot of the areas that we think we have proof in, we don't really have proof in. For example, it's really hard for us to prove that our memories work, because to prove memory, we have to rely upon memory. But we're reasoning in a circular fashion at that point. We're using our memories to talk about our memories. It's the same thing with our logic. We have to use our logic to talk about our logic, but that, of course, is circular reasoning. We can't even really prove that gravity is going to work tomorrow. We know a lot about gravity. We know how it functions presently, but we don't have any proof that it's going to actually work tomorrow. And getting even more practical, like we can't prove that our loved ones really love us. If you were waiting to get married and you're waiting until someone can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they will be faithful to you forever and for always, you're going to be single forever. We can't prove a lot of these things. And another thing, it would be really impractical to try to have to prove everything. I wouldn't ever be able to hop in the car, because unless I understand and can prove that everything in the car is going to work, I wouldn't be able to drive anywhere. I wouldn't be able to fly anywhere unless I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt everything in that plane was going to work perfectly. Wouldn't be able to eat anywhere unless I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the food was prepared perfectly and safely. It just becomes wildly impractical to actually try to live that out. And the reason why I start here is because I have to show that the skeptic and the believer are actually on similar footing. They're on equal ground here. What we all do is we all have a set of beliefs that we believe are justifiable, and we have lines of evidence. We have lines of argumentation for why we believe those beliefs are justifiable. So, with that being said first, let me go now into 6 different lines of argumentation for the existence of God. Here's the first line of argumentation. We'll call it the Kalam cosmological argument. These lines of argumentation, a lot of them I'm pulling from Dr. William Lane Craig. He's been a huge influence on my own investigation into Christianity, so I want to give credit where credit's due. Here's how the Kalam cosmological argument goes. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe must have a cause. It's 2 lines of premises with a conclusion. One of the things that I love about this argumentation is that if you can falsify one of these first 2 premises, then the conclusion doesn't follow. So this line of argumentation is open to criticism. It's open to being falsified. But to do that, you have to attack one of the first 2 premises. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And these are just simply observable premises. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. That's what we see in the real world. We do not see things just magically popping into existence. What we see is that matter always comes from matter. Life always comes from life. The universe has a beginning. One of the crazy developments within the last 75 to 100 years of modern cosmology is that we can really show the universe definitely had a beginning point. There used to be this belief that the universe was eternal, that it kind of expanded and then rebounded and expanded and rebounded, but that has been shown to be not physically possible. We definitely can tell the universe had a beginning point. So, if everything that has a beginning has a cause, the universe has a beginning, well, there must be a causer behind it. We'll go to number 2 here. Number 2 reads like this: the fine-tuning argument for the universe. What's really cool about the fine-tuning argument of the universe is that it says there are necessary, like prerequisite physical conditions for a universe to be life-permitting. We'll use the gravitational force, for example. Gravity has to be set at a very, very specific number, and we'll get just how specific it has to be. Gravity has to be set very, very specific in order for universes to form, stars to form, for universes to be life permitting. And if that number isn't set really, really finely, precisely tuned, then the universe is either too gravity heavy or too gravity light, and it either collapses in on itself or it expands into nothing. So let me tell you how finely tuned this gravitational constant has to be. The gravitational constant is 1 in 10 to the 60th parts. Now, that's a crazy number. It's 1 with 60 zeros behind it. Your body, our average body, has about 1 in 10 to the 14th cells. That's how many cells we have in our body. So this gravitational constant is 4 times, more than 4 times, higher than the amount of cells in one human body. The way you can think of this is picture like an old school radio dial, and it's got all these like numbers and stations on it. Imagine this dial has 1 with 60 zeros behind it, that many little notches on the dial. The gravitational constant has to be so finely, precisely tuned that if that number is clicked 1 to the left or 1 to the right, the gravitational constant is either too strong or it is too weak. That's just one fine-tuning element. Physicists have looked at the strong and weak nuclear force. They've looked at the expansion rate of the universe. They've looked at like the beginning amounts of energy and mass. And all of these prerequisite conditions are so precisely finely tuned. I mean, the numbers they're all on this order, and some of them are even bigger. So finely tuned that if they were off by a hair's breadth one way or the other, the universe would cease to allow life like we know it today. And what that does is you have to ask, how is that possible? How on earth would the prerequisite like conditions be met like this? You see, one of the weaknesses of intelligent design, we can look at biological life, human life, and see lots of complexity. The evolutionist can come in and say, well, the complexity is there because we have adaptation changes over time. And given enough changes, enough adaptation, over time, it will produce the complexity that we see. What's great about the fine-tuning argument, it bypasses all of that. This is even further back. The fine-tuning says, well, without any of these just physical components, you wouldn't even have the possibility of evolution. You wouldn't even have the possibility of adaptation. So how do you account for all of these physical constants being so finely tuned at the very beginning of the universe? It seems more likely, more plausible, that there is a creative mind that put these constants into place, who took the dials and finely tuned the dials to get them right where they need to be. Now, the third argument, the third line of evidence we'll go to reads like this: it is that God is the best explanation for the existence of objective morality. God best explains why you and I have this sense of real right and real wrong. Here's how philosophers will argue. They use this word grounding. they will say that to account for morality, we have to have a grounding for it. We have to have an explanation, a source of where this morality came from. And if you try to ground morality in anything other than God, you'll find that it soon devolves into relative morality. It's not objective, it's not binding. It's just what's right for you is right for you, what's right for me is right for me. But no human actually lives like that. We all hold to standards of right and wrong that we think are binding, they're authoritative, that when we say objective, it means you're accountable to this standard of morality, even if you don't agree with it. The question becomes, why do humans across the globe live like this? Why do we all seem to have this sense that there's real right and there's real wrong? Now, the Christian accounting of this is that you and I are made in the image of God, and that you and I have the laws of God put into our very hearts by our Maker. Now, for the atheist, they're given a very difficult challenge. How do you account for objective, binding morality if there is no objective moral law giver? A lot of the answers that you'll get from atheists will be, well, morality has come from evolution. We have learned over the years that what helps us survive is what's moral. But the trouble with that is we could easily say, well, what helped us survive 100 years ago is no longer advantageous for us. Our morals now have to shift. It may have been very advantageous for us in the past to have lots of kids and to propagate as much as we could. What about in a day and age where population is increasing, where it seems like the world is running lower and lower on supplies? Is it now moral to not have kids? Is it now moral to maybe not take care of the elderly like we used to because they're a drain on society? You see, this evolutionary basis runs aground really, really quick. It doesn't give us a binding objective standard. Number 4, we'll say it like this. God is the best explanation for the resurrection of Christ. Now, you may be sitting there watching this going, resurrection of Jesus, that's just a fairy tale. That's just some crazy myth that Christians have come up with. Well, let me try to push back on that a little bit. Dr. Gary Habermas has done a lot of really important scholarship on this very subject. And what he's done is created this kind of bottom-up form of argumentation. And what he's done is he's taken historical facts regarding the resurrection. And they're all historical facts that even atheists, agnostics would believe. He's taken all of these historical facts and he just stacks them like bricks on top of each other. And then as you have kind of this wall of historical facts that everyone believes, that all, even skeptics believe, and once the wall's built, he'll say, how do you explain the information of all these minimal facts that have stacked up? So let me give you a couple of examples of these facts that have been stacked up. Habermas will point that all scholars, secular and religious, they'll all believe Jesus really did die by crucifixion. We have historical attestation outside of the scriptures to validate that. All historians will believe that the disciples, they really believed that they had saw Christ post-mortem. They really believed that was their claim. They did not claim to have a vision. They did not claim to hallucinate. They did not claim to have a dream. They said, we were eyewitnesses to him. We beheld his glory. We ate with him. We talked with him. We walked around with him. He hung out with us after his death. Historians will also say that this preaching about the resurrection happened very, very early. It happened within 5 years of the resurrection. We know this from 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul quotes an early creedal statement from the church. This is very important because it means this idea about the resurrection wasn't a later development. It was happening very, very early on in the church. And lastly, Habermas will point to the fact that you have skeptics who are converted to Christianity, like James, the brother of Jesus, and the Apostle Paul, who was a Pharisee actively persecuting the church. Historians all agree that they had a conversion moment. Now, his whole point is to take all of those historical facts and say, how do you best account for all of this stuff happening? How do you account that Jesus really did die, The disciples really did believe that they saw him come back from the dead. They started preaching very early about this. How do you account for the rapid growth in Christianity? How do you account for converts that were once skeptics claiming to believe, just like the disciples, that they saw the resurrected Christ as well? What is the best explanation for this? Is the best explanation that they all hallucinated? Is it that they're all lying for some reason? The lying argument doesn't carry you very far because almost all of these early disciples suffered brutal, horrible deaths. Most people don't lie to get themselves into trouble. They lie to try and get themselves out of trouble. But what we see across the board is that they refused to recant their story. They all held firm. No, we saw him resurrect from the dead. So he just simply asked, how do you account for this? What is the best explanation? And the best explanation for the theist is that Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, came down in the second person of Jesus Christ the Son, and that he died on the cross for our sins, and that he resurrected from the dead on the third day, just like he said that he would. This leads us to our last line of argumentation here, the fifth one. And the fifth one is that God can be known through faith in Jesus Christ. This is a very subjective argument. I will fully grant that. But it doesn't take away the power from the argument. The power here is that Christ is not just a random set of philosophical ideas. He's not just a set of theological ideas. He's not just a historical person. Jesus is a real person. He is relational. He's interactable. We can know him. We can experience him. Jesus offers to us not just this like warm and fuzzy feeling. He offers to us truth. He offers to us revelation. He offers to us peace. That there's nothing in the world that can compare with it. There is nothing. There's no substance. There's no dollar amount. There is no sensual pleasure that can satisfy the deep longing of the soul like Christ can. Now, let me share with you just one more here. This is a bonus point. Christianity, in my assessment, has way better answers to life's most important questions. It has way better answers than any other worldview I've examined. And here's what I mean by life's most important questions. It's questions that science can't answer. There are 4 primary questions we have to answer. Our origin. Where did we come from? What is the meaning of life? What constitutes morality? And then number 4, what is our future? Where are we going? Christianity has such better resources to answer these questions than, say, a purely naturalistic worldview. On a purely naturalistic worldview, our origin, we're a cosmic accident. What is the meaning to our life? There is no meaning to our life. You make up whatever meaning you want, but you have to admit that whatever meaning you ascribe your life is totally arbitrary. What is the whole point of morality? How do we know what was right and wrong? We don't. There is no real sense of right and wrong. What's right for you is right for you. What's right for me is right for me. It's all preference. We can't ever really say what is truly right or truly wrong. And number 4, what's our future? There is no future. We live, we die. Doesn't really matter if we live 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. Everybody's going to die. And even if somehow, like all these guys out there now, these tech billionaires are trying to figure out how to live forever, even if you can extend your life a couple more years, 50, 60 years even, the whole universe is going to die a cosmic heat death. Eventually, the sun is going to consume the earth. Eventually, the universe is going to run out of usable energy. There is no greater point. We live, we die. That's a horribly bleak outlook. And I think it rubs against a lot of intuitions that we hold deep that we just seem to instinctively know. We seem to instinctively know that we have real meaning in life, that what we do here on earth matters, that the way we treat people matters. There seems to be this instinctual knowledge that there is some kind of a greater future waiting for us, even if we might not know what it fully is. Well, atheism fails miserably to answer that, but Christianity actually provides intellectual and emotional answers to the deepest, most important questions that we have. And so here's how I would end. I would end, if you're watching this and you're thinking this is not persuasive. You've laid out your case. I hear your case. It sounds a lot like all the other Christians I've heard. Here's what I would say to you. Are you skeptical about your skepticism? Because what the Bible's going to show, guys like Pharaoh, The Lord does unbelievable miracles before him, and all Pharaoh does is harden his heart. When Christ resurrects from the dead, in the end of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, it says, some believed, but others doubted. They're literally looking at a guy who came back from the dead, and some people are like, I just don't trust it. I don't believe it. Are you skeptical about the roots of your skepticism? Have you turned your own critical thinking onto your own thinking? Because what I have found is that oftentimes what's really holding people back is not the evidence that's out there. There is some deeper spiritual, some deeper emotional issue going on for almost all of us. I know it was the case for me. It's just simply the fact that I don't want somebody telling me what to do. The great lie and the great deception all mankind has fallen into is the same lie and deception that Satan told Eve and Adam. You can be like God yourself. That's what we really fall victim to. I want to be in control. I will be like the Most High. I will be like God myself. But I just love you enough to tell you, you make a terrible God. You are not equipped to shoulder the weight of running your entire life, of knowing how to navigate all the highs and lows, all the questions of life. There is a resource out there so much better than your own sufficiency. That resource is the person and work of Christ and the knowledge and wisdom he's laid out for us in the scriptures. So I would implore you to give him another look and to be skeptical about your skepticism. What's the real motivation for your hesitancy? If you got any kind of value out of this video, I would love it if you would like this. Drop a note in the comments. Let me know what you found interesting, what you didn't find compelling. I'd love to see your thoughts on this. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Also, in the description, there are a couple of different ways that you can give and support this ministry if that is something that you would like to do. Thank you for your time. Thanks for checking out this video. I'll see you on the next one. God bless you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.